right now I am just working on some of the details on the hindquarters of this horse. And what I've been doing is I want to keep all these lines kind of abstract-ish. So what I'm doing is I'm going in and putting some clear water in the lines of the reins and the leather parts of the bridles for these horses. And then I'm just dropping in a combination of ultramarine blue and some black and a little bit of maybe green gold just for some interest. And I'm trying to keep it soft and watery and dreamy, but still you can totally tell what the detail is. I just am going for a little bit of artistic abstraction, I guess. I want this to be an artsy piece. I want to put it in a art competition. So I don't want it to just be your average run-of-the-mill painting. That just is completely realistic, like what you would paint for a commission often. So as you can see, I've got like a little dot of water right here, and I'm going in to the dot and then transferring that water over to the horse. And I've got really faint outlines right now, but I want to just go in with my paint and just drop in some watercolor. Okay, so this side of the horse is facing the light more, and then this side of the horse is in shadow. So I want that side to be cool, warmer, because the shadows are actually warm. In this picture, the horses are kind of standing in the shade of a big tree. I don't like that line at all, so I'm just going to blur it all out, and I can go in later if I want. When in doubt, blur. If you don't like how something looks, just make it blurry, and maybe no one will notice. Really, that's the whole point of, you know, some soft edges. They don't attract the eye, but they make the eye happy, because the eye and the brain wants to figure out a scene on its own. It's like the art viewer's mind is like a little toddler and says, I can do it, I can do it. You don't have to give me so much information. That's kind of how the art viewer's mind works. The mind wants to look at something and use past information to figure out new information. The brain naturally does that. So you don't have to be so literal all the time in your painting, and the viewer and the viewer's eye will figure it out. If you know, you gotta, the one thing that you really have to do is get your proportions right and get your tones right. So if you get your darks and your lights right, and you get, see, this is wah-ha-ha-hack. Can we just blur all that out and pretend it didn't happen? This is all going to be in shadow anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and blend this all into a big shadow. We don't want to look at all that mess. That does not even look like anything. So look how pretty all of a sudden it becomes poetic instead of a whoopsie woozies. Yeah. That's something I like about watercolor. It's just, it really will do a lot of the painting itself if you just let it. While I have all this wet, I'm going to put in this little very blue shadow. This is all quite blue through here with the shadow that's on this horse's face. This is a, if I am not mistaken, I do know a little bit about horses. My best guess, these horses are Welsh ponies, and they're awesome. little guys. A little bit bigger than a Shetland pony, but they're still pretty ponyish. But they can be very sophisticated in their conformation, like a warm blood almost, but they're ponies. So they're great show ponies. You'll see them a lot at hunt shows. Kids will be riding them over the jumps and that kind of thing. It's called Hunter Jumper competition. Let's hint at that nose a little bit more, shall we? This pony in particular is in the background anyway, so it doesn't need a lot of detail. I want the viewer's eye to just figure it out as they go, and just kind of swipe over this pony. I don't want too much attention to be on this pony, really. So I do want to try to keep it soft, and y'all, it's so much harder to paint soft and loose than it is to do detail. Like, everyone is so impressed by detailed painting, but I can tell you this, if you look at someone who's done a painting that's really photorealistic, and this is just my experience with painting, it's that's actually easy painting because the artist doesn't have to figure anything out. All the information is already in their reference photo there. They don't have to figure anything out. They can just copy the photo. And that can be impressive, and their techniques can be amazing, and they can certainly accomplish things that I can't accomplish with my less realistic approach. But it is true, there's less creativity the more you copy a picture. Ooh, look how nice and soft that is. That's good. Okay, I'm not going to touch that anymore, except for maybe this corner. I want it to read a hard edge right there to show the blinker of the bridle. These are called blinkers. When you see those patches over the horse's eyes, they put them over the horse's eyes, of course, so the horses won't spook at everything, because horses can be spooky little Barbie dolls sometimes. So anyway, gosh, I'm all over the place, aren't I? I worked on the ground here, and I did it kind of wet on dry, and it was just too harsh looking. So I took a paper towel, a wet paper towel, and I just wiped it all off. So now it actually looks kind of nice and soft, and I do like it better. So we're getting somewhere, but I only have 3 or 4 days to finish this painting, so I don't know, folks. We'll see what happens. But when I worked on it before, I was recording and not really paying much attention, and I just think I needed to pay closer attention to the little details. So I'm going to try this foreground again. Basically, this is going to be a redo. So I thought I would record it, but I put the camera up on a tripod so I can actually pay attention to what the heck I'm doing. Last time I didn't really pay attention as much. I was just kind of splashing around, hoping for the best. So, you know, this painting has to be right because I want to enter it in a competition, and if I'm not happy with it, I just won't enter it. So yeah, so I want to get a little bit better better result than what I had. I just didn't like how it looked. The foreground was too harsh, and it just wasn't dreamy and soft enough. It kind of stole all the attention away from the horse. That's not good. So I'm just working on more details in the legs. I'm trying to keep all this really loose and free-flowing. I don't want it to be completely tight and realistic. I want it to have a little bit of painterly dreaminess to it. So it's so hard to get that perfect balance between dreaminess and realism, especially since this painting is going to some pretty hardcore horse people. The judges will really know about horse conformation, and so not only do you have to make a good painting, you have to capture the essence of a horse for judges who are kind of picky about that, because this is all about horse art. I think I found out who the owner of these ponies are. Apparently it's really rare for there to be what they call a four-in-hand. Which means 4 ponies pulling a cart, or I don't know what the lingo is for cart. If it's a buggy or wagon, or I don't know. I was in the horse world, but I never did any driving, so I don't know what their lingo is, and there's definitely a lingo that those in the know have, and I'm just not sure what it is. But so anyway, it's not every day that you see 4 ponies pulling a cart, because it's really hard apparently to drive them when you've got that many hooked up all together. So so I just went on YouTube and I looked for Welsh ponies, 4-in-hand Welsh ponies, and there's really only one team that did it. So I think I found the owner, and I tried to contact her, but she doesn't really have much of a public profile, so I'd love to show her this painting though, just to share, you know. But I don't know, she might be really private. A lot of people are kind of leery of putting too much information online, unlike me, who I'm just all out there, aren't I? But I do that for my art so that I can share it with the world. That's kind of part of being an artist, is you gotta be willing to put yourself out there. For some people it's a really hard part of being an artist, but I don't mind it. I've met some really interesting people, and it's been a fun journey. And I've met people and done things that I never would have done if it wasn't for my art. So I do love that about the art community. And in this part of the painting, I didn't talk much because I was really concentrating, so I thought I would just do a little voiceover here for you. I'm just adding little details to the harness and the tail, and just darkening some features and adding little soft details, and they're pretty subtle. So I thought it was useful to just speed up the video right here, because there's not much to talk about, except for right here is kind of interesting, because I was doing the bit of the bridle, and that is the part that goes in the horse's mouth, and there's a lot of white shiny parts. So I went in with a pencil and I hand drew it in, and then I did a lot of negative painting around the white parts of the bit. So there's not any masking that I did here. It's all negative painting, which took a lot of concentration, and thus I was not talking a lot during this part of the video because I was really focused. So there you go. Voiceover was definitely better because I was really concentrating and it's hard for me to
talk and really focus. So here I'm just doing more of the harness and putting in little dark details and really popping out parts of the harness. I didn't want to overdo it because if it got overdone, too much attention would go to the harness and not enough to the overall painting itself. So I tried to have some self-control and just do a little bit of detail just to give you a sense of the harness, but not too much that it kind of took over the painting. So that's a hard balance sometime to reach. So here I'm just putting in some shadows again, and again I'm trying to make lines in the shadows to draw your eye towards the pony. So I'm trying to keep the eye in the painting and create little currents of shade. Here is the completed painting that I ended up submitting to the American Association of Equine Artists. So I did meet my deadline and I got it submitted. I was actually painting on it the same day I submitted it, so it was very last minute. But I'd been out of town and then my son got the flu, so it's just been kind of crazy. But I'm really happy with how it came out. I added quite a bit of shadows right in here, and I think that really made it look a lot more realistic, and a little bit of the dappling that these gray Welsh ponies have. There's his little friend, and like I said, I darkened the tail and tried to strike a good balance between realism and keeping areas soft. So there are some hard edges where the hardware is on the harness, but there's also a lot of softness in the harness, which is challenging, especially right here. You can see that's a good example where I kind of blurred some edges and then let some edges be really obvious. And I think this guy came out great. I like how he's just kind of abstracted, and I love how that orange in his facial tones, or the hues of his face, really glow. So I'm happy with that. I think the pony looks good. And you can see my little splashes that I added at the end to just kind of liven up the foreground just a touch. You don't want to overdo it. It's easy to go too far. So that's the painting all finished up, and we'll see if I get into the competition. This is my first time entering this competition, so it'll be interesting to see if I'm able to get in. The only concern I do have with this painting is that this picture is, the reference photo was of the pony. It was just like a side of the pony. It wasn't like in 3/4 view or anything. And typically a rule of thumb for painting animals and people is have the face turned or the body turned a little bit. So you're not looking at one side of the animal or person. And I broke that rule, and it does make it look a little more static. So that's my one critique of this painting. There are other critiques too, of course, but that's the one thing that I'm not crazy about this image, but at the same time, I was going through all the images that I have, and I had to use a picture that I took. I had to use my own reference material for this painting, and I just love the story that this picture tells. I love how this guy is so much taller than the pony, and they're standing waiting for the parade to start. I just think there's an interesting story behind the actual image, so I like that about it. And I don't know, I did take a chance with choosing this reference photo, but we'll see what happens.